Hello, season's greetings, and welcome to the Say I Do with Fuse podcast festive special. As a nice little end-of-year roundup, we have asked the members of the Fuse Ceremonies Celebrant team to come up with their ceremony highlight of 2023. Now, this could be a funny moment, an emotional moment, a heartfelt one, maybe something unusual that our celebrants, even in their experience, has happened to them for the very first time. Just something that stands out. And it's a lovely way of showcasing not only the size of our brilliant Fuse Ceremonies family, who are scattered up and down the length and breadth of Scotland and indeed the north of England as well, but also to showcase many of the different magical moments that can take part in a ceremony and perhaps give you some inspiration as to what you could include in yours if it is coming up. So to begin, I want to play a very quick piece of music, which I think sums up what we're about to do here, and also sums up one of my ceremony highlights of 2023, where Maureen and Mark, at the end of their ceremony, as they walked back up the aisle as husband and wife, did so to this.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this.
Kind of sums it up, really, isn't it?
So let's get down to business.
Let us begin then by welcoming some of our Celebrant team to share with you their ceremony highlights of 2023. Coming up in this little montage, we have words and stories from Susan Crenbrink, Brian Baxter, Amy Shipway, George McLean, Marjorie Russell, Yvonne Hanna and Douglas Gilgallen. But to start us off, a little anecdote from the most immaculately turned out celebrant in the country. He would say so himself as well. It's the Scottish celebrant, Paul Browett.
My favourite ceremony moment always involves other family members, particularly in the symbolic gestures. And one of my favourites was when a couple chose for their kids to be involved in a hand fasting. And of course, we had a ribbon representing the bride and the groom. And the little boy had a nice blue ribbon. The little girl had a nice lilac ribbon representing their favourite colours. And as I arrived at the venue, the groom came running up to me, very panicked. They had some great news to share in the ceremony. So he asked, instead of him announcing that they were expecting another addition to the family, if I had any spare ribbon. And of course, as I always do, give them a choice of any colour that they wanted, and they selected for a yellow ribbon to be added in during the hand fasting. Supplied me with a picture of the scan and always revealed mid-ceremony. Absolute scenes from both sides of the family. It was top secret. Nobody knew a single thing.
Back in July this year, I conducted the ceremony for Debbie and Ross at the Lochside House Hotel. And this is one of the highlights for me because it was so theatrical. Debbie runs a stage school down in Dumfries, and the couple actually met when they were playing Sandy and Danny on their local version of Dancing with the Stars, where Ross was the local celebrity as he was the local footballer. It was just so much fun. I loved being part of this ceremony. The stage school kids from the stage school that Debbie runs sang while she walked down the aisle, and they also sung throughout the ceremony as well. We had a moment where they sang Let's Get Married by the Proclaimers and invited everybody else to join in. It was just so much fun. And then afterwards as well, during the drinks reception, the stage school kids sang This Is Me as well from The Greatest Showman. So everything about this was just right up my street, and I just absolutely loved being part of it.
One particular wedding that I had the privilege and honour of conducting 2023 was in November. The wedding was between Alexandra and Logan, and this was particularly poignant for me as I had the privilege of marrying Alexandra's mother and father at my first legal marriage ceremony. But the wedding in November between Alex and Logan was poignant as it was a bit of a Black Watch theme, as her piper played at my wedding 34 years ago, and the bride's father, Jim McIntosh, also served with me in the Black Watch, along with the pipe major, Alistair Duthie. Logan, wearing a kilt, which was fantastic to see, particularly as he's from the United States of America. He had his jump boots from his time as a parachutist in the United States Army, and he even spent some time making them very shiny. However, his boots weren't as shiny as the Highland Celebrants. A great wedding was had, and it particularly sticks out as I've now married the bride and her mother and father. 2 sisters to go.
Back in July this year, I was asked to conduct the ceremony of one of my closest friends, Gemma, as she got married to her fiancé, Jordan. What an honour. There was one serious side to the day when we started the ceremony by acknowledging those people who couldn't be here with us on the day, and particularly Gemma's late uncle Stephen, who sadly passed away and wasn't able to attend the ceremony. Now, one of the symbols that our family often used to remember Stephen was from the natural world, symbols of butterflies, birds, but mostly butterflies. And coincidentally enough, there was a little butterfly that joined us in the ceremony room on the day. He was flapping up against the French window doors, but when we offered to let him out before the ceremony, and he didn't want to go, so we let him stay in. And just as we were mentioning and acknowledging Uncle Stephen in the ceremony, this butterfly flew up and flapped its wings very dramatically between the couple and upstaged them a little bit, I would say. But it was a really meaningful moment for the whole family, who really felt like that was him showing his presence there. And yeah, it was a very emotional and meaningful moment for everyone. So what an honour to be part of such a special day for one of my closest friends.
Back in June this year, I was lucky enough to conduct Andy and Kim's ceremony at the Corinthian Club in Glasgow. Andy, who's a former colleague that I used to work with in a previous company, asked me to conduct their big day, and it's always a pleasure when couples and friends come back and ask you to do this. Also big football fans, so during the ceremony they wanted to display their love for each other by transferring into each other's life, just like a football player would do from one team to another. So after we concluded the legal marriage paperwork signing, we took a Scotland home top and a Scotland away top, and they both duly signed each other's top, thus displaying their love and transferring their love into each other's life. And to top things up, the rest of that day and into the evening, they asked every guest that came to celebrate with them to also sign their tops, and I believe they are now framed and proudly displayed in their home.
In September this year, I was delighted to conduct the marriage ceremony of proud Scot Michael and his beautiful American bride Alyssa. They travelled from their home in Kansas City to be married in Pumferson Golf Club, surrounded by family and friends. Their ceremony was very representative of their lives and included a handfast ceremony with a cord they'd made with a cardiac monitoring wire to represent Alyssa's job as a paramedic, a webbing strap representing Michael's job in the fire department, and a green ribbon to represent their new family name. They said their wedding vows with 2 oathing stones, one from Oklahoma that was a keepsake of Alyssa's mum, and the other they had collected during a special walk together on a Scottish hillside. It was a real coming together of 2 cultures and 2 families, and a couple very much in love.
One of my favourite ceremony moments from 2023 has to be at the marriage of Zoe and Connor. They got married at the Hartrees estate in Biggar back in August, and they decided to start their ceremony with a Mexican hug. A fantastic way for guests to start to get to know each other if they don't already. And the giggles and the laughter and the fun just really made the whole venue a really uplifting place to be. So essentially what we did was the couple had a hug first, and then they turned to their bridesmaids and groomsmen, and that Mexican hug travelled throughout the whole venue until the last 2 guests had taken their seats. It was wonderful. It was really good fun, and in the spirit of the day that they had planned as well. Just perfect for them as a couple, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
My favourite memory of 2023 as a wedding story, and it happened back in June at the wedding of a couple called Deborah and Johnny. And we got to the section where they were to exchange wedding rings, and for some unknown reason, the word ring was just too much for my groom Johnny to cope with. And I could see him starting to struggle to keep his face straight. But unfortunately, I had to repeat the word, and it's at that moment he completely lost it and burst into a fit of the giggles that was left him uncontrollable for the next 30-odd seconds, which rippled through the whole entire congregation of guests and family and friends, and it took us a good minute to regain our composure before we could start carrying on again with the rest of the ceremony. But what a wonderful memory and a unique moment that I've never experienced before, and one of those fantastic memories from this wonderful job that we have that I'll remember forever.
Thank you to Douglas for that one, and to our team so far as well. Now, in any walk of life, don't they say you should never work with children or animals? Well, if you're a wedding celebrant, avoiding both of those things can be very difficult. However, as we always like to say, it's your day, your way. And we have a couple of stories coming up now that feature some of our furry, four-legged and maybe even feathered friends as well. A few of our celebrants have shared a wee anecdote where their highlight of the year has involved working with animals. So here come the stories from Simon Houston, Sean Kelly and Angela McIntyre. But first of all, it's Debbie Daly.
My favourite ceremony moment of 2023 has to be Nicola and Jamie's wedding way back in the 4th of March this year at the lovely Beaufield Hotel and Spa. When it came to the ring exchange, I asked their best man to come forward and hand over the ring, and unfortunately he had forgotten the rings. So he went back outside and then proceeded to come back in and walk down the aisle with their dog, Elias, who was their ring bearer. And he's a beautiful dog. He is a husky type dog with the piercing blue eyes, and he strutted down that aisle with the rings tied to his collar, looking very smart and really pleased to see his mum and dad who were waiting for them. Of course, it had all been planned, and the guests loved it.
I'm sure some of the more seasoned celebrants are used to working with animals and are quite relaxed about any potential pitfalls. I had my first experience of it in a wedding in Glasgow in December at the Engine Works in Maryhill. A tremendous couple, Mark and Nikki. They were really keen for their fully grown cockapoo to play a part. His name's Laddie, and he was just full of beans, and he was going to be the ring bearer. And I was a wee bit anxious when they told me that because, well, I suppose anything could happen when the door was opened and he had his big moment. And it was wonderful. It was really, really funny. But as soon as he saw Mark, the groom, he just raced down the aisle and threw himself at him and nearly knocked Mark off his feet. And of course, I was standing behind him and I thought he was going to take me down with him. But he grabbed onto him. And of course, fortunately, the rings were around his collar. So the best man was able to take the wee bag off the collar and get the rings out. And yeah, it all went fairly smoothly. But I have to say I was anxious about it. But it was a wonderful moment. It was lovely, very funny as well. It was a lovely way for my final ceremony of the year to kind of have a nice fitting climax. It was great fun, and they're a lovely couple and wish them all the best.
I was asked to conduct a ceremony in Annan for friends. Both these friends had been married previously, so it was their second wedding, and they did not have a bridesmaid and best man as such. And we decided the night before the wedding that their dog Luna would bring the wedding rings up the aisle to the couple. Luckily it went off swimmingly, and Luna was an absolute fantastic ring bearer.
Well, I mean, it's hard picking a favourite moment, isn't it? Especially when so many of mine probably really aren't podcast appropriate. Thanks, Perth Young Team, you're always a delight. But if I had to pick a sensible one, though, it would probably be from Zara and Rob's wedding this summer. Now, Zara and Rob were both cracking people anyway, so we knew it was going to be a lovely day and a really great ceremony. But when we were talking about what they wanted in the ceremony, and we were going over the Kenny things they could do to make the ceremony more them, they jokingly asked about including their dogs, to which I obviously absolutely straight-faced replied,
Of course we can include them. So, cut to the wedding day, where after the couple drank from their quaich, we had a very special silver dog bowl, not filled with whiskey though, I should say for legal reasons, that their two wee belters were able to drink from as well and be part of the big day. It's always really nice seeing the excitement in people's faces when they realise that you really do mean it when you say it's your day, so we're going to do everything we can to make it yours and make it memorable.
Now, of course, weddings are a huge part of what we do here at Fuse Ceremonies, but we also offer and create and conduct many other different forms of ceremonies. These include an affirmation or renewal of vows ceremony, where couples want to showcase their continuing love and commitment to one another after perhaps a certain number of years together, or maybe even having the opportunity to celebrate with a larger group of family or friends if perhaps their wedding took place during COVID times. We also conduct baby naming ceremonies where a child is welcomed formally into the world, assisted by parents, guide parents, family and friends. It's always a beautiful ceremony, and the child doesn't have to always be a newborn or a baby. It can be for a child of any age. And Sue Earnshaw from the Fuse Celebrant team has picked a baby naming moment as her highlight of 2023. We will hear that soon. But of course, one of the other major ceremony types that we conduct throughout the year are funeral services, or as we like to describe them, celebrations of life, showcasing the wonderful life that a certain person has led and the mark that they left on their family and indeed the local community. And very often these can bring up some very, very amusing moments. And several of our Celebrant team have chosen a moment from a celebration of life ceremony. And we'll hear some anecdotes coming up right now from Fiona Lenny, Josephine King, Morag Webster, John Leo Scott and John Toner. But first of all, let's start this particular section with a very brave and open story from our celebrant, Nancy Braid.
My ceremony that I was proud of this year was having the courage to actually conduct my brother's funeral. It was a tough gig, and right up until before we started, I honestly wasn't sure if I could do it or not, but I know he'd be proud of me. Happy Christmas, everyone.
I think one of the ceremonies that stick most in my mind from this year was actually a funeral service that I carried out for an ex-serviceman. When I was speaking with the family, it was really, really clear that they were incredibly proud of his military history, as was he. He was a Royal Signaller initially and then transferred into the Royal Artillery and had done his 22 years serving Queen and country. Now, it's always something as an ex-serviceman that strikes a chord with me, and you just want to give back. And that's what we did. I worked alongside with the funeral director, and between us we managed to put our feelers out. We got a hold of a piper, but we got a hold of a bugler to play the last post. But we also managed to get standard bearers as well from the Royal Signals and the Royal Artillery to make sure that the standards were lowered in respect at the appropriate time. It was a very humbling experience, but do you know what? It's about giving back, and that's something that will always strike a chord for me.
Okay, so there's the hilarious story of a celebration of life that I had done in the far out reaches of East Ayrshire, and I visited with the deceased's family, and I asked the daughter as we were coming towards the end of the visit, is there any funny stories that you'd like to share with me regards your dad? At this point, the deceased grandson came out from the kitchen and he said, oh yeah, remember the story of Uncle Jim, the deceased son, and the Gala Day parade. They had two pet sheep, Charlie and Billy. Both of these sheep slept in front of the coal fire, were completely domesticated, house trained, and would go out in the street and play with the kids. His Nana and Papa were running out of things to dress up his uncle for the Gala Day parade when he was uncle was a child. And what they did was they put a lead on Charlie, a lead on Billy, and dressed the uncle up as Little Bo Peep and sent him out on the Gala Day parade with the sheep dressed as Little Bo Peep. Not quite sure how that would go down these days, but I thought it was quite hilarious.
Might sound a bit strange to say, a funeral was perhaps a favourite ceremony, but not the ceremony itself. It was more in the preparation for it, writing the eulogy, the tribute for the person that had passed away. I was researching what the 1960s looked like in the Grassmarket of Edinburgh, and we kind of, I suppose, associate that area of the city now as a kind of cosmopolitan lifestyle with lots of farmers markets and the cafe culture, but there was none of that back then. There was no stags or hens, and yes, its bars were popular, but it's nothing like it is today. And I just found it quite fascinating being able to sort of research and setting the scene of a time gone by, and somewhere I actually frequent quite a lot and have spent a lot of time in the Grassmarket area of the city. But for what it's worth, that's my favourite part of a ceremony this year.
In November this year, we lost a really cherished member of our community, and as a celebrant here on Noida, I was asked to conduct this funeral. It was very organic, and we buried him on our own soil, and the ceremony was so poignant and everybody was involved. It was incredible. But the best part for me, I've never seen anything quite so organic, was at the end, whereas in a normal funeral somewhere else perhaps you might have people like gravediggers or funeral directors to sort out the filling of the grave. We each took a go of the shovel, large group of us from the community, and we all put soil in. And at the end, when the last sod of turf was laid on him, everybody just naturally formed a huge circle around the grave, and it was just so beautiful. Such a unique moment, so organic, so tribal. Yeah, that was a special moment.
My favourite Celebrant moment of 2023 was giving the eulogies at a wonderful celebration of life for two people who had been together for over 70 years and who died within just 3 weeks of each other. The family decided to hold this in the home of the couple, and they all contributed something. The grandchildren spoke, friends brought flowers and candles and food, and there was a wonderful photograph slideshow, beautiful music, and the two eulogies I gave soon became one eulogy because they'd spent so much of their lives together, and it was an absolute privilege to be part of and to see what we had built together.
I was privileged to conduct a baby naming ceremony for a beautiful baby girl called Sophie Victoria back in July this year. This took place in the family's garden. It was lovely and informal, with family and friends sitting round in garden chairs, and the sun was shining, which was very fortunate as the family live in the Cumbrian Lake District, which is prone to rainy weather. As part of the ceremony, the guardians lit candles as a symbolic gesture to celebrate Sophie's life, light and warmth, and this was a challenge as the outdoor breeze kept blowing them out. The guardians moved under a canopy to keep them alight, and I jokingly commented on the fact that a fire risk assessment hadn't been done. Unbeknown to me, one of the guests was a retired fireman who found it all very funny but kept a more careful watch on all of the proceedings. All was well, and it brought much laughter to the service.
Some really touching stories there from our team, and Fuse Ceremonies can help you with any major milestone that may be coming up in your life. Just take a look at our website for details on how to book our wonderful team for whatever it is you may be marking. FuseCeremonies.co.uk. Don't forget our live Celebrant checker is available as well, so if you know your date and you've got your eye on a particular person, type your date in. If they come up, they are available and you can get in touch from there. Now, my own personal wedding ceremony highlight would have to be from the beginning of June this year, where it was my first outdoor wedding ceremony for Sinead and David. They had selected the Croon in Loch Lomond as their venue. And it's a venue I had been to before as a guest, but had never conducted a ceremony. And if you remember, at the start of June, we had the heat wave. And it was an absolutely glorious day. So I knew it was going to be an outdoor ceremony. And I had booked a wee overnight with my wife just down the road. So I walked up to the venue on that particular day. and walking round and just seeing the stunning backdrop of Ben Lomond and the beautiful Loch Lomond sunshine and all the seats laid out for the guests. It was just truly magical. A wedding in the sunshine, a couple who could not deserve it more. And it will always stick in my memory as being a very, very special day indeed. And what was really lovely is that we actually met them the following morning when we'd wandered back up to the Croon on a wee dog walk. And they said to me, oh, lots of our friends came up and said, your friend did really well in doing the ceremony. And they just assumed it was one of their pals that they'd known for years who was conducting it. So I knew that I had done my job to the best of my ability with that feedback. An absolutely gorgeous day. Let's hear about more gorgeous days as more of the team look back at their ceremony highlights of the year. Coming up, we'll hear from Janice Hendry, Christopher Griffin, Julie Murray, Alex Payton, Lucy Hayden. But first, another anecdote from this man. He had an alternative ceremony highlight and he has a wedding ceremony highlight as well. 2 for the price of 1. Here's John Toner.
I think one of the biggest ceremonies that hold a place this year for being one of the ones that stick in my mind most was the wedding ceremony for Kirsty and Gary at Gadgirth in Ayr. Instead of me pulling out all the stops for them, they actually did that for me. I was over in Germany with 6 ex-service colleagues and we basically gathered together to make sure we're all okay, but also to go to a place where we can do some military research and just remember and reflect and just help each other. But the flights got delayed and unfortunately I was going to be late for their marriage and I had to phone them and tell them that. But they wanted me. And so instead of getting another celebrant there, they waited. They moved their wedding. They moved it to 5 o'clock at night. And it meant that I was able to land safely and drive to the venue where I could conduct the marriage ceremony on the banks of the River Ayr. It was a place where Gary had proposed, and so it completed the circle. It was just an incredibly humbling experience, and I'll never forget it.
I have had such a wonderful year, and all the couples are memorable. The one wedding that was different was the marriage of Unita and Tony. They got married at Dalmeny Park in Glasgow, one of the rad groups of hotels stunning in its setting. Unita is from Indonesia, and when I met her along with her bridal party at the wedding show in Glasgow, we had an instant connection. In true Scottish style, they had the hand fasting to represent Celtic tradition and Indonesian colours. So we had a Scottish ribbon and ribbons in red and white for the Indonesian flag. After the legal part of the ceremony of signing the marriage licence with their witnesses, this followed with an Indonesian symbolic gesture of sungkeman, which is a ritual that honours the parents. Unita and Tony each kneel down in turn in front of each of their parents and are blessed by them to celebrate the joining of 2 families and, of course, 2 cultures. This was truly a special part of the ceremony and one that I will always remember and feel privileged to have witnessed on such a joyous occasion.
One of the many favourite moments for me in 2023 was having the privilege and pleasure of creating and conducting Kirsten and Phil's legal wedding ceremony at Citation in August. They'd asked me to marry them just 6 weeks before their big day in August. Phil and Kirsten wanted the wedding to be a public announcement of their love for one another and of the commitment they already share and had made as partners a long time ago. They wanted the ceremony to be a celebration of their love, shared with their families and friends. Together we managed to create a beautiful, personal and family-focused ceremony, with one of the highlights being a lovely poem written by Kirsten's mum Karen. Here's a wee excerpt from Karen's poem, dedicated to Kirsten and Phil. Bind fast to one another, loops and circles, husband and wife. May a weave of blessings swathe you and grace you all your lives.
So my first legal wedding ceremony was memorable and always will be that first step out into the big world of being a celebrant. An absolutely gorgeous couple, Danielle and Chris, a beautiful setting, restoration yard, part of Dalkeith Country Park, and the wedding was to be outside in front of their beautiful orangery. So arrived in plenty of time and met Laura, our lovely Laura from Fuse Ceremonies, who was there to observe me that day. And just before the groom was arriving, the heavens opened, it started pouring. So it was a mad dash, all hands on deck, including Laura and myself, to grab every seat and get them all inside. Of course, when the groom arrived, the rain stopped and the decision was taken to get all the seats back out again. So we got them all set up beautifully, and our beautiful Danielle, the bride, arrived and knew nothing about it. So talk about the storm before the calm.
Every wedding is special in its own way. The one that stands out for me the most this year was Thomas and Mags, both post office workers, both high up in the union where they met. Thomas retired, just hitting his 70th mark. Mags still working, just coming of retirement age. Mags battled breast cancer and won. Thomas had 3 strokes. They booked a venue in George Square, the Piper Whisky Bar, which I had built a great relationship with. So when Glasgow Register Office couldn't supply a registrar for the wedding, the venue contacted me and I made the special day happen. We had hand fasting and quake, where we involved family members. I came away from the ceremony with a great warmth in my heart to know it's never too late to find love and that special person to spend the rest of your life with. After all their illnesses, their wish was if anything else happened, they would do it as Mr. and Mrs. And I had the pleasure to make that happen.
How do you choose the best moment of a wedding, or the best wedding that you've ever done, when every wedding is full of magic and joy and laughter and love and fairy dust? I think that my best wedding was Leanne and Gary. I've known Leanne for quite a few years. They have 3 children, including 3-year-old Alia, and they spend all their free time on Luscantar Beach in the south of the Isle of Harris, in the Hebrides, which is the most beautiful beach. It looks like the Caribbean. There were just Leanne, Gary, the 3 children, and me there on the day. It was raining in all the rest of Scotland, but it was like the Caribbean in Luscantar. It was a very short, sweet, and simple ceremony. And the highlight for me was that Leanne and Gary gave me the 3 reasons why they loved each other. But not only that, the 3 children also gave me the 3 reasons why their mummy and daddy loved each other. And that was just magical. After about 2 minutes, Alia decided to take off her pretty dress and her shoes. So we all took our shoes off and we did the wedding as we paddled in the sea. And it was just magical. Lots of love and congratulations to this beautiful family.
Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this little reminisce about 2023 with our Fuse Ceremonies Celebrant team. So many wonderful memories from all of the team there. And it just shows how unique and special Humanist ceremonies are, with so many magical moments, every one of them unique, as the team have said. And we look forward to conducting many, many more in 2024 and beyond. If you have a big day coming up and you'd like it taken care of in the most professional and personal way, then have a chat with us here at Fuse Ceremonies. All you need to know on booking our Celebrant team and finding out more about what happens during a Humanist ceremony is available at our website, fuseceremonies.co.uk, or give us a wee follow on Facebook or Instagram. On behalf of all of the team, from me, Alan Edwards, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous 2024.